Welcome to Warblog. I'm doing a third video. Not much has changed, to be quite honest. It's not really going to be anything more exciting, but it's just more drones. But what I've done now, and I have actually added these before, but I have no idea where. You can't really see it that well. Maybe I should do it a bit differently, but it doesn't matter. Electronic warfare companies, and they're not really. It's basically representative of a certain degree of functionality. There's no real sort of clear way to sort of integrate it. So this is just basically a representation of this sort of element of the operation. And I've given the Ukrainians one as well. So, I mean, this isn't a game to play, for example. I'm just sort of demonstrating the concepts. I mean, in particular, I'm reading it's a Western thing, but it's called RUSI, and I have no idea what it stands for. Not getting any sort of hints from that. Let me just have a look. RUSI. It's the Royal United Services Institute, which I don't know. I mean, I guess that is British or American. I mean, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I'm just sort of looking at it, and I'm reading an article in there about. There's probably quite a lot to read in there. I mean, I've not really been keeping abreast of things too much, but it's all about essentially the use of drones and electronic warfare, and in particular, it's got this sort of thing. It's to seize a contested area, the force must survey it, isolate it, degrade the enemy, fix their forces, suppress them, close and destroy, and then consolidate and control of the sector. And it sort of breaks that down into 7 things, and it's talking about how this, in particular, the bit I'm reading is talking about the Ukraine's use of UAVs having been effective. It's talking about how they went from having a wall of drones, said in particular in combination with massive efforts to expand the training of UAV pilots and roll out infrastructure on the front to main C2. Ukraine moved from building an army of drones to fielding a wall of drones, and it has imposed an attrition belt for approximately 30 kilometers on the front line where it can systematically target Russian forces. And it goes down and sort of breaks down the nature of that 30-kilometer sort of space, and also sort of talking about the phases that is mentioned. I mean, the survey is all about visibility. Obviously, we can't really do much about that here, but it's interesting to read that because it's very new, and all this stuff is very sort of it has changed since 2022, and it's something I've been aware of for a while, and so hopefully this will sort of allow me to actually consider, a little more detail about what's happening. And this is why I suspect the war is going to end, because I've been lazy. I haven't been necessarily lazy. It's just complicated, and I've been basically sidelined, distracted. I think it's the word I want to use. I love this game, and I love doing stuff with it. And to be quite honest, now that I've got ChatGTP, to sort of help do things, it's quite good at certain things. I can say this is my air combat table, and I can ask it questions, and it understands it. I can say, remind me where I've done this, and it will tell me exactly. And also, I've just added the this capability. How does that look? And it'll tell me. So it's actually pretty good. So we're going to just jump into this and just reiterate what we've got. So we've got drones, obviously, so we can put drones into the drone superiority thing. But what we've also got now is these units there. See, for example, we've got the mouse over there. I could very easily say to ChatGTP, how do I make this nicer? How do I make this more compelling? And it will tell me. Whereas before it was always sort of that would be nice, but I don't have time to really just go and figure it out. It's not going to be difficult because it's probably just a styling issue, but I'm not even sure what I got in there. Everything takes a bit of time to think about, but ChatGTP can do that basic thinking. But the point is, we've got these EW units now, and the point, what I'm going to be doing with them is they're not just going to be what they are here. There's going to be, I think, two other types. There's going to be static types. So you might start up with something like this, but it's got 0 movement, so it can't move. It's a static thing, and I might build it so that I can deploy them with these units. So these units can deploy static units, but also I'll have airdrops. So you can deploy them by air. So you can sort of say, well, we've got 3 units, and you can deploy EW units here, here, and here. So obviously if you're Ukraine, you wouldn't want to necessarily deploy one here because they'll just go in and trunce it. But, reading this Russia article and all, obviously bearing in mind, all other sort of comprehension, understanding, it seems that it's a big, a lot of what's going on is all about each side hunting out each other's EW capability, its drone capability. I'm looking at some of the questions I was just asking ChatGTP. Because I sort of think of it as them building Wi-Fi points, but it's not. It's basically it's talking about each side building a multi-layered comms stack. So that's SATCOMs, relays, wired relays, dispersed nodes, and rapid replacement. So there's a lot of this going on, and I think it's a massive shift in in modern war. And I'm just sort of, because ChatGPT is a bit thick at times, and I'm just saying that clearly there's a lot of people thinking about this and considering their own doctrine, integrating, UAV battalions into their forces, into their logistics systems. So it's talking about how basically both sides are hunting out each other's EW and drone operating units as a priority, and how the troops on the ground are actually sort of like less of a priority, and they're only moved in after a particular area has been reduced. So, I mean, it's going down here, and it's also isolate. And I don't think that's necessarily something we can really do in here. I mean, we could sort of, isolate this, but I think the notion of isolation is that this whole town is isolated, not this hex, the whole town. So we can ignore that, so to speak, from that sort of thing. But on the next phase, the degrade phase, once isolation has created the conditions for attrition of defensive positions, it becomes possible to focus on targeting on enemy fighting positions inside the contested sectors. So they're really just sort of fighting on this. So it's not, again, just one hex, but you can think of it as one hex. Basically, it's really all about using the UAV capability, with other things like glide bombs, rockets, artillery, and everything else. And once you've got them down to a certain position, you can start to move in. But the big thing here is, I'm just reading about all of that, and I'm just trying to get a bit of sense. And ChatGPT is saying, everything you're seeing in these articles is exactly what you're applying in the game, because ChatGPT is quite good at making you feel as though you're doing everything right, even if you're an idiot, so I'm quite happy with this is going in the right direction, but ChatGPT does agree with that. So essentially, we've put something into the drone superiority, but we can now, this has a range of 8, it covers everything else, I've tested it. So let's suppose we wanted to attack this unit here, just for example. We can now see that the EW unit is in there providing EW capability against these drones. And at the moment, the balance of that is something that I've not really considered. I mean, basically each unit has, the first number is basically their capability. So he's got 1, which is fine. But the multiplier is 10. So this unit would have like 1 on its own, and this would have 10. So that would be 11. But if he had 2, that would be multiplied by 10. That'd be 20. That'd be 21. And the way that works is you roll a random number. I can't quite remember exactly what that is, but I think it's 1 to 100. And if you get under 100, if you get under 21, you then stand an option for a result. It doesn't mean you've hit it. It means now you can start to consider what sort of result you got. It might be just a suppression. It might be just an abortion of the the attack and the flight. It might be that the attacker is eliminated, and there are a few other options. So basically, building these things up is critical. So the thing is, you could have, say, if you had a factor of 2. And you had 3 of these units, all of a sudden you've gone up to 60% capability against drones. So it can get quite powerful, really. And so I've yet to decide, because for example, I might decide that I want 20 units on the table, and if I'm going to do something like that, then I might want to reduce the factor down to 5 or 6. So each one of these times 6. So that's just basically some of the background maths. What I'm saying is I've yet to actually sort of determine, the background maths and how it's multiplied from the base values that you see on the counters as to what they're actually intending to do. I've set it up so that, if they're on their own in a ground strike, they, like artillery, they just get walked over. They have no real defensive value in that sense. But basically they're pretty much not going to do anything, because there's only going to be like a 10% chance of this attack not going through. But the thing is, they do actually have their own inherent capability for defense. So if I roll 1, then these units on their own could defeat these drones. But we just give that a go. So it went through. It didn't. There was no sort of reduction in that. Won't bother too much with that. I think basically all I'm trying to say is we've now got this situation where we've got the capability to put on a lot of these EW units, and so now what's going to happen, we're going to say, well, we're going to fight these units, and so we can go in there, and to be quite honest, living and learning, it might be that he actually got quite a big thing on that, because it's down to a quarter. But basically, I'm not sure how to play this, and I'll have to go back and consult with ChatGTP and say, listen, I've got this situation, because if the EW unit's on its own and we get drones attacking it, it should basically be destroyed, and come up with some sort of consensus on that. But basically the point, because the thing is, otherwise we're going to do, as we do with a lot of other things, spending turn after turn after turn trying to hit these, and I think that basically that should be gone. If not, there should be like an 80% chance of destroying that every time. So and that's just really a case of setting up the logic in the game so that these are a priority. But the thing is, then you can end up with sort of say, well, we get 3 of these every turn. You can just bring them along the road, and then so you've got this sort of scissors, paper, stone situation. Whereas, do you want to be using your drone for drone superiority, because you've got to split things up? I know, generally speaking, the drones will probably be not multi-role, but there will be some. Some will be definitely loitering munitions. They're not really designed for one or the other. Some will be designed just exclusively for dropping grenades into trenches. But others will be sort of, there's other ones, obviously, drones, which are going to be used for surveillance, because that's a big part of it. and these drones will probably be quite specific. So it's not a case of do we want to use our drone for surveillance, or do we want to use it for dropping a grenade in a trench, or taking out a a camouflage tank. These are all different systems, and I think that basically what we're going to be sort of so this sort of consideration of do you want to do this or that, I think it's less significant really, because they're going to have specific drones that are for anti-drone operations, and that's it. They're probably not going to use much else. But I think at the same time you might say, okay, well actually they're coming from the same resources, they're coming from the same battalion, they're coming from the same group of people. They're either using their time on drone superiority, or they're using it for ground strikes, or they're using it for chasing the EW units. But basically for a game I think it's sufficient to sort of use this sort of mechanism, and it's all I've got at the moment, so that's that. But I think we've got now this combined system that is now going to shift essentially for the first time really in this game how you consider the scenarios properly, because usually they've really been sort of more infantry centric. Oh, we're going to move these into here, but they're not now. And so, for example, what I did think of was what I should really do next is change this scenario, but I probably won't, because I'd rather just do another one. So I'll find another scenario, some other sort of equally nondescript place, but in there I will actually include the full suite of options, so including minefields. There'll be mines, there'll be obstacles, there'll be maybe engineering features, there will be strategic bombers, for glide bombs, there'll be rockets, there'll be artillery, there'll be air defenses on either side. There'll be the whole remit of all of the complexity that's involved in the battle space, along with what we just really sort of tested here with the drone capability and functionality. So that's it really. I just wanted to do this other video. I don't think I'm going to go on for too much more, because I've done the other videos and they take up a bit of time and no one really looks at them anyway. But this is just the third video to sort of demonstrate that we've now got, as a counterpart to we had drones for years. Drones have been in there for years, but they were treated like air units, and there was a bit of a complication there. I mean, it wasn't real complication, because the situations would never really arose where you had drones and air units at the same time contesting each other, and even when you did, you couldn't put drones into air superiority anyway, so that was never really an issue. But now we've separated them completely, so you've got air superiority, but you also got drone superiority, and it's two completely different things. So essentially got this new layer, and I think it's and I'm trying to tie it in with other things that I'm reading. For example, I look at the South Front thing occasionally, but it always makes me feel guilty for not not adding loads of scenarios. It just takes so much thinking. But I'm looking at this Russie thing. I've never really seen it before, and it's got an about page actually. What does it say? It looks English actually. 61 Whitehall venue hire. It's got an about page, but we've got experts, job opportunities, mission and values. As an independent institution, we produce evidence-based research, publications and events on defence, security and international affairs to help build a safer UK and a more secure, equitable and stable world. So essentially, it's definitely a UK thing, which is all I really wanted to know. There, I can have a look at what else it says. But basically, I've been going through that article, and it's, what's it titled? I'm not going to give the link for it. I could do, I guess. Not that anyone's going to get this far. It's called Emergent Approaches to Combined Arms Manoeuvre in Ukraine, written 23rd of October, so that's quite old now. And basically, going through it, it sort of outlines a lot of things that I had thought, and obviously that I've just intonated that I'm developing, and I actually only found this after I developed all this, and then thinking, oh, that's what I've just done. But I think the other thing, I'm not sure I touched on it fully, but to breach on it again, basically I was talking to ChatGTP about this, and I was saying, well, you know, obviously all of the defense departments, I didn't say it quite like this because you've got to be careful, because it will say, oh, but the Jack Watling article doesn't mention that, because I just posted it, so I'm talking about that. No, I'm talking generally. You know, for example, the Russia article, it sort of says that this is how the Ukrainian forces are doing it. They're, you know, I'm not going to go through it all now, the things that I've just been saying, but in particular there's a sort of, they've got their 7-point thing to seize contested sectors and to force to seize a contested sector. The force must survey it, isolate it, degrade the enemy, fix their forces, suppress them, close and destroy, and then consolidate control of the sector. I just pointed out to ChatGTP, yes, but the Ukrainians are not actually doing any of that. They're losing. It's the Russians that are doing this. It's obviously the Russians that are pretty much doing exactly the same thing. And it does talk about some of the tactics that the Russians are using, infiltration in particular. But you know, I mean, it's just so common sense. But I think the key there is that the units are moving in after. And I think what it was inferring is the traditional doctrine, the units went in first and there was a massive consolidation of units and firepower, but you can't do that anymore because of visibility issues, etc., etc. But what I said to ChatGTP was, you know, everyone is looking at this now, and everyone is considering, you know, what does this actually mean? And this Russia article is just one probably of many, but it's interesting from the point of view that it's talking about this 30-kilometer well, that's the contested zone, but the main battle area from which they've sort of got their drone operators working from, and the deep battle area. You know, so there's the front line is no longer a front line; it's a 30-kilometer band of operations with a contested zone, a grey zone. You know, some people are referring to these as the kill zone. Anything that moves gets hit, and humans are easily killed. And so it's. But I think the point I was trying to make is that, you know, obviously the United States are going to be having huge amounts of research into this. They're looking into this, and you know, what they're going to do, start buying loads of DJI drones, start sort of ordering, you know, 1 million of a particular type of drone, only to find out that this time next year it's out of date. You know, they've got all these challenges in front of them on how to, you know, align their fighting forces to sort of win and be dominant in this new sort of 30-kilometer type battle line. And the sort of things that we're looking at here, because, you know, we're seeing the videos and there's no one there. There's just the odd person running around. They're wearing sort of cloaks of invisibility. You know, we're seeing shots in infrared and ultraviolet and, you know, black and white and, you know, heat, whatever. You know, there's no, you know, if it's dark, you just see all these, you know, these glowing people running around, and they're on the ground thinking no one can see them. Oh, I'll hide behind this tree, you know, unaware that, you know, they're just a big glowing blob behind a tree. I mean, some of these videos are actually, you know, I mean, they're quite interesting. I saw one earlier today with, and it's got really nothing to do with what we've just been saying, other than it's just sort of an interesting perspective. I mean, obviously the guy dies. Well, I would imagine he does. But I've seen a few like this, and they basically have some sort of soldier that's either in the back of a truck or on a quad bike or a motorbike, or, you know, hiding in a trench or something, or just wandering around. And then he encounters the drone, and you can see he recognizes the drone. I asked ChatGPT, I said, is this sort of a big problem? I mean, is there sort of a lot of consensus on the impact of drones on soldier psychology? And it was saying, yeah, because basically they're saying that quite often the only time they know that there's a drone is when they hear it, and by then it's too late. But you're seeing these videos of them being chased, and they're trying to outrun these drones, and these drones are really quite fast. And it did dawn on me, and this isn't a professional opinion, but we are in the age of the Terminator. I mean, there might not be bipedal Terminators, but there's these death bots chasing you. And there was this one guy that I saw today. He was in the back of a pickup truck, and obviously this drone is going faster than this pickup truck. It must have been going at 40 or 50 miles an hour. It's faster, it's catching it up, and the guy in the back of the pickup truck, which is full of stuff, at some point he notices the drone, turns around quite quickly and starts shooting at it, but obviously missing. As I said to ChatGPT, I said, do they really miss? He said, well, it's actually quite difficult to hit a flying target because they're actually shooting at it when it's sort of 40, 50, 100 meters away. And it's quite difficult to hit because it's moving about, and it all happens so quickly. They're wearing heavy clothing, they're under stress, they're just firing blindly in that direction. But you can see that he's firing, and presumably he just puts his finger on the trigger and unloads the entire magazine towards where the drone is. And the last thing you see, obviously, is the drone very, very close to whatever's in the back of the car, and then it stops. So presumably it exploded, and you see him half making an effort to get out, but it was so close there was probably no way he'd got out. And it would just really depend on there's a sort of the nature of the explosive force, which presumably went off, so he probably died. But the thing is, we're getting a lot of that, and I think that it's very different. It must be really difficult being a soldier, and it goes to some extent. It takes me back to my first thoughts on the Ukraine war because when we first saw the videos of the Ukraine war, my first reaction was they should give people Kevlar shields because they were getting out of APCs. I said, these APCs, to start off with, my first impression was they shouldn't be using these APCs. They should be just going straight to Toyota pickups, which is what they've done now. They're all in Toyota pickups or pickups of one form or another. The APCs are very, you don't see them so much. They're driving like family cars and things like that now. I said they should have done that right from the start. Yeah, I can see that happening. But what I also said, when these people were getting out of these APCs and into minefields, and then the medics were coming along and jumping into the minefields, and everyone was getting their legs blown off. It was very sort of, I think it was quite a distinctive video that a lot of people saw right at the beginning of the war. We should give these people shields. And I know that they are giving them shotguns, but I'm not sure that they've all got shotguns. Because with a shotgun, you've got a broader spread. You're much more likely to hit a drone. But again, it's the speed of reaction. You're just not ready for it. But considering that you're no longer fighting, man to man, most of the battles are now drone to man, and that the man is just sort of trying to defend himself. It basically a good firm, like a Roman shield or something a bit smaller, something more man portable, wouldn't necessarily be proof against explosion. But if everyone had a shield with them, they could if they had to get out into a bit of ground that they're uncertain about, they could use two shields to walk about. The explosion of, if you put it onto a landmine, it would either go off when you put it on, or it would go off and it would take all the blast away from you, because they're not actually that, they're not that powerful, these landmines. They're just enough for anti-personnel purposes, just enough to, tear into soft skin. A full Kevlar shield would last quite, would be quite suitable for, for that. But it'd also be, if a drone is chasing you, you just pull out your magical shield and obviously prepare for a blast, which might take, come from above and around the sides of the shield, but it'll probably, take the full force of it and deflect it in some way and give you a hell of a lot more chance of survival. But it must be quite, it's the only thing I do think of it. I don't think it's funny, really. These people are being chased around by these drones. It must be quite a horrendous way to die. Quite, a sense of unfairness, really, because it's not fair. There's someone playing a bloody, an Xbox game. As far as they're concerned, they're just sitting there with these controls. And it is strange. You see, you get all these videos on the South Front site of that sort of stuff happening, and quite often you see them going in there and taking a double tap on these people that are obviously just been hit by a drone, and so obviously it's the choice of either letting them bleed out and die where they are, or just going and making sure that they're humanely dead. I don't know what the thinking is there, but there's probably going to be a lot of strange people going around that have been involved with operating these drones, and clear and distinctive memories of chasing people with their drones. So there's probably going to be a lot of people having a lot of nightmares and a lot of peculiar memories. But anyway, I think I'll leave it at that, because I don't want to go on forever. I just wanted to make this video to show that we've now got the combined arms of the EW stuff. I wonder if we get better odds. 1.9. So basically that should have just destroyed that. I'm going to do that now, because now I've got ChatGPT, I can do these things quite quickly. So if it's on its own and its drone power, it will pretty much destroy it. But it's still for development, so I'll be able to sort of think about it. But as I said, I'll probably try and take some time out to create a fully structured scenario that uses a lot more of everything, and see where how that goes. But I'll leave it at that, and I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.